what are places where you think modern parenting has gone absolutely wrong?
If you talk to most children today and you tell them what do you like about school, there's only one answer: friends.
I decided to go part-time because my older boy, he said, I want you to open the door when I come home from school. It was so important for him, how many followers do I have, who's saying what to me on a comment box. I mean, I was very disturbed seeing this recent Netflix adolescents. I couldn't sleep at night.
I think a lot of parents, we live in denial. Ki nahi, hamara bachcha aisa nahi ho sakta hai, right? Everything is okay.
My parents, for instance, thought we had a name for everything. They're like, what is this? I mean, even y'all were like this. But as I said, actually every person should be tested.
But you need to be clear of saying, okay, if you have to visualize and say, okay, now my child is 18 years old, what would I define as success as a parent? Now, for somebody, it may be, like she said, A stars or 90% or whatever. For me personally, no. I want to see a child who's genuinely kind, who's considerate.
One of the teachers told us this, if you can teach him guile and resilience, you've done an excellent job. And I think our older one is very resilient.
Today's guests are Shiv and Pronita Agrawal, a dynamic couple whose careers span global impact and entrepreneurial success. Shiv is the founder of ABC Consultants, one of India's leading exec search and recruitment firms. He studied at St. Xavier's, Kolkata, and holds an MBA from the London Business School. Pronita is a graduate of Delhi School of Economics and the Tufts University, and has worked extensively with the World Bank and the Asia Development Bank. Beyond their professional milestones, they are thoughtful, intentional parents to two teenage boys, 15 and 18. And in this episode, they reflect on what it really takes to raise children in today's world. Okay, let's get started a little bit with, say, maybe talking a little bit about Aryan and Ved, in fact. If you were to describe them in a few words each, like, you know, how would you describe them?
I would say real, high on EQ, high on empathy, good kids. They are not, and maybe academically they are not up there, you know, and that's not really been our focus there. But fundamentally good, straightforward kids who will do the right thing more often than not.
And they're very sweet boys.
They're authentic, warm, loving, caring. So he says, when he says empathy, they feel.
Yeah. And what does a day in the Agrawal household look like? Is it starts in the morning with school, of course, and then what happens next?
You have good days and bad days. So look, I think they're in a school which is more a day boarding, so they come home at 4 o'clock. Right. From there, then it'll tend to be free. Now, we're not big on you come back, rest for half an hour, and then start working. The reality is tuitions, which is I think a curse in this world.
And also in a way a necessary curse.
Yeah, but then to me the education system is actually
has to,
we're doing the job of what the school should be doing.
Ideally doing, yeah.
So you'll end up every day there will be some tuition or the other happening. We'll try our best an hour or two every day to spend time together. Now that could be by way of watching, watching, for example, right now IPL could be a thing, and then they'll do their own thing at night. So it's not a very structured. I don't think we have enough routines to say 9 o'clock this will happen, 8 o'clock that will happen.
But once they do come back home, for example, there are tuition classes, for example, and then are there scheduled, say, extracurricular activities and stuff? Are there routines that?
So I think he is referring to the last few years, and they've been in board years, right?
Yeah.
But earlier, if I see, yes, they came back from school, they would rest a bit. We'd go to the park to play, come back, and not every day did they have an extracurricular. Tuitions also started much later now, every day, but otherwise. Typically, they would eat by 7:30, so that was a routine, and they themselves set it. Sleep would be good at 10 earlier. Now I don't know when they sleep.
I think
now you don't know.
Post the pandemic, I think sleep went for a toss. So that's the downside, is that sleep is later than it should be. But I think
because
it's a function of when we sleep, right? And I think
also when their peers sleep. So
but why the pandemic in a way? What
because
changed?
there was no structure. There was no structure. There was
online school.
Then people did things. You could have slept off in the afternoon also. So it just there was no real structure to your day-to-day life. And I think it's also a big function is what parents do. I mean, we are by nature not early, we don't sleep early, we sleep late.
Yeah.
And I think kids land up, we may
Mimicking?
tell kids sleep early, but kids do what they see and not what they are told. Right? So I
That
think
is true. That's a good line. Yeah.
from that lens, I think we are to blame, for their, it's not erratic sleeping, it's just later than they should be sleeping. Yeah.
What is
But
ideal.
I beg to differ here because I feel they would sleep on time, and then once they got into their teen years, their friends would all sleep late. So a lot of the work actually happened after 8 p.m. And then there is homework as you get older, right?
Yeah.
So
And also once they're in their room probably,
Yeah.
and once they're in their teenage years, it's also hard to then be that much of a helicopter parent, I guess, once they're in
no,
their
you're
room.
told to get out pretty much of the room.
Exactly.
Don't
I
come
guess,
in.
yeah.
And I think the phone, the biggest curse. I feel with our older one, we were still lucky we could give it to him only at 13. The younger one,
The older
because
one,
of the,
Aryan, is 18 and
yeah,
Ved is
yeah, 15. So Aryan got it at 13. Ved got it even earlier because the pandemic happened. He needed a phone to be in touch with his friends. Aryan, in fact, came home one day and said he was not meeting his social goals because he didn't have a phone. He was one of the last to get his phone.
And what were the social
Goals is meeting friends, talking to friends. I don't game. This is the other thing. They all have these virtual friends, which are, PlayStation friends, right? He wasn't much into it. So he said, I need to chat with my friends. How do I chat? Nokia phone will not work. Then came social media. So again, in some ways, I do blame ourselves for giving that phone early and getting them.
But do you think you had an option? Could you have not?
We could have put some boundaries.
I think if you could go back, regret is I think letting them lose too early on their screens. I think there's this phrase of, we all over-parent in real life, but under-parent when it comes to the digital world.
The virtual world.
And in the virtual world, right? And now the kids of today's virtual world is bigger than their so-called real world.
The actual
So,
world,
and we have no clue, right? Because we're tech savvy enough to manage, but we don't know what sites. We don't get Snapchat the way the kids get it, right?
They chat on Snapchat. They talk on Snapchat.
So like WhatsApp, someone said the other day, set up a WhatsApp group for the kids. And I was like, no kid wants to be on a WhatsApp group now.
That's not the channel that they're using.
So, and because if we don't understand that, how are you going to even monitor it? Now we can, we'll go through the occasional day where we'll say no, screen is banned and all of that. But it comes back again. So I think...
And another thing I want to say is, and in fact my older one, Aryan, had said that when I travel with you guys for a holiday, I don't see my phone as much. So I'm bored over here. So beyond that extracurricular, I don't know if India has enough to just go for a trek on a weekday. I mean, just around the neighborhood, right?
Yeah. And that's also like the downside of living in a large city.
Yes.
It's hard to also get to from one place to another, right? You'll basically get
after
stuck in
school-
traffic and you're tired or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say that, we lived in a house earlier and we moved to a condo, apartment. And one of the reasons was and I wish we did it earlier because for the kids, their
have those like sort of
social goals, as
goals
she
met.
said, or just...
Which are a little more accessible and you don't have to travel.
Yeah. And,
So we had that when we were kids, right?
Yeah,
That we would play in the playground and actually you learn how to negotiate, make your rules. If you've had a fight, how do you...
Or managing those tough conversations.
Your mother didn't come and sort that out
Yeah.
for you. Here, if there is a controversy in school, a lot of times the moms are getting involved, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't
And
know.
why do you think that happens? Why aren't
Because
parents
children-
also letting, kids just
As
figure
I
it
said,
out?
I think children are more comfortable talking online and not, in fact, we were just doing a session, it's called the relationship intelligence or something,
Interesting, okay.
where, you learn how to navigate, issues when you're facing each other. These kids are so comfortable in the virtual world, they're chatting openly. The moment they come out and face each other, they're probably finding it harder to have that conversation. And I see this more with my younger one, who actually in his 7th to 9th was in the COVID world on an online platform, hated online school.
I would say actually we don't know any better because as parents, to go back,
Yeah.
we don't have enough knowledge about how this world
And
works.
all of this is new.
It's
right?
all new.
I
It's
mean,
all-
we didn't grow
yeah.
up with social media. And this is the first generation which will have social media in such formative years. So we actually also don't know what the impact and aftermath would
even
that
something
be.
like handwriting. Okay,
Yeah.
so Aryan had a very bad grip on his pencil. And when I was asking the teacher who he went to learn how to write better, he couldn't write on a straight line. It was all over, right? She said because motor skills haven't developed, they're so used to writing things on the computer. So simple things like just doing that stroke on, like clay, just strengthening
Just
the
mark
muscles,
making,
right?
yeah.
So I know a lot of schools are today now saying, let's not give the iPad so young. Because while it's making them quite smart in the tech world or whatever, and responding faster, but maybe they're forgetting some of these skills, which are important.
We spoke a little bit about some of the, you said that the social media thing or the tech thing is the thing which scares you the most. What is the topmost thing which the impact of social media really scares you about? And, sort of, is there a way, and how have you guys managed it? We spoke a little bit about, the kids who've been introduced to social media have a little more time to, get into real conversations, in the offline, the actual world. Is that one of the things, or is there something else which worries you more?
I mean, what worries me more about, and particularly my younger one, is I don't know what's going on in his mind. I don't know where he is.
Their decisions they take are based on social media.
On their peer.
On their peer, or what, so if a YouTuber says for example, in between they were crazy over this drink Prime, which was a sensation in the West. It's not come to India, thankfully.
It's like a beverage? Or?
Yeah, it's like a beverage there,
Beverage.
which I tasted and I was like, yep, this is horrible.
Full of sugar.
But because there was some
popular.
YouTuber and it sold like 1 billion cans, and so when we went out, so a lot of their decisions of what is cool or what is not cool and what is right or wrong is dependent on that. Now, maybe they're getting the best advice, but we don't know. So I would go back to saying it's just the unknown. I'm not as worried about the safety and whether something will happen to them because they don't have access to money as yet. They, so I think the risk is limited, and we know if they're going out, we know it's not like they would wander off on their own. So it's just the fear of the unknown of what actually is forming their mind,
point of view,
their point of view in early years.
It's a real thing. They say it's peer parenting. It's not the parenting by us, right? It's important what your peers say. So I know, like my older boy, he went through a bit of a mess in school, and it was so important for him to not have his friends leave him as followers. And these are not real friends. Today he understands that it's okay if they went. I don't need them. But it's how many followers do I have? Who's saying what to me on a comment box? I mean, I was very disturbed seeing this recent Netflix show, Adolescence. I couldn't sleep at night. And I'm like, thank God my kids are kind of out of it.
But do you think it's very real?
It is very real. This whole thing about ugly, I mean, that's what finally drove him, right?
Yeah.
Like we actually asked our boys about those hashtags and those emojis, and fortunately they didn't know what it meant. But like even a heart to have different colors, I mean, it's hard. And that child is also probably a quieter child, cannot express, cannot push back.
And this is also such a different world that we just don't know what some of these emoticons mean, or it's a new world out there. So,
and I think as parents, we're living in denial of, this is like, okay, this is something bad that's happening. We all know it's not good. So let's just focus on the good stuff on school and on studies and on their extracurricular. But this is part of their world which is like 4 to 6 hours a day. We have no idea. Okay, us not knowing is fine. But what is the outcome of that? How does that impact their social skills, their emotional skills?
Just the unpredictable nature of this beast.
I will still say for our boys, I mean, for both of them, they spend a lot of time on a sport. So like Ved will be researching on football, Aryan on cricket. Aryan today spends a lot of time on Snapchat, so 2-3 hours chatting, but that's because he's been at home, no school, so they need to talk to friends. But I'm not worried, as he said, of getting into the wrong sites and getting the wrong knowledge. But it's just, at the end of the day, they just look so tired because they've been 6 hours on a screen. Anyways, probably studying some of it through YouTube, to see it faster. And then you're like this glazed look. You don't want to sleep.
The advantage.
And so are there ways to be able to balance that? I mean, at least even for, say, even professionally you would have seen, right? Like what work used to happen, say in person, offline, and now a lot of our work is actually just on Zoom. And it actually just visibly also tires you a lot. our ability to focus, because I am also guilty of doom scrolling on Instagram many times, and then I find myself not being able to focus. Right. So, and especially at a younger age, how do you manage that? Like, are there ways to be able to like mitigate it?
I think the only real way is, to the point she said earlier, when we go on holidays, they don't do it. Why? Because they're engaged.
They're engaged.
So we, I think as parents or as the schooling system or whatever, need to find ways to get into the kids' heads and say, okay.
And meaningfully engage.
Meaningfully engage. I'm not talking of go to this class and go and play this sport. And
which we do as a family.
But I'm saying that, if we do more of that, what we hope for is if it's 4 hours or 6 hours of screen time today, you could start to bring it down
a little bit.
less.
Yeah. And over a period of time, they will also try to self-regulate in a way and know what is working for them.
And we have not been fans of this sort of the net nanny culture of saying we'll put all kinds of blocks on your phone and your iPad, because the kids are way smarter than we are.
And they need to learn themselves to discipline.
Yeah,
who's going to do this in college?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to say, Aryan, put it
This is an
off.
interesting term. I didn't know. Net nanny is a...
Yeah, I think it's a... I don't know if...
It's a new coined word or like...
No, it's been there.
It's been there,
It's been there, but...
There are these passwords where it will block you off.
Yeah,
lots of
or
people-
like say time controls in some sense.
Screen time. Now, I think we could all do with some of that because we need to control our own screen times. But, but for kids, I don't think directionally that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I think the more you push back, the more it's the forbidden fruit. I want that even more, right? So you have to long-term find ways to truly engage children.
And for them to develop that judgment.
Yeah. So which is why I feel like, we miss it and our boys have said it. If you lived in a joint family, very different. Your cousins are around, right? We lived in a building where every evening 4 to 7 we were down playing.
Especially if you're also surrounded by a lot of people, there is...
So here in a nuclear
naturally
family...
there's engagement, right?
And for me,
Something
I
or the
always
other is
worked
happening.
where I came back home for them. I would go to the park with them. So I did all of that. But if they had like that big house where, there were lots of cousins...
Yeah, their
you'd just be
grandparents
playing
and cousins, etc. Similar age folks,
Yeah, we're now most of us are in the double income,
Nuclear family
household. So you don't have the time, because if husband and wife are away till, let's say, 7 o'clock, you have no option but to outsource parenting. So, the worry becomes, and now our kids are older today, but if they were younger, my worry is that you've outsourced your parenting to your didi. Or your,
the nanny or whoever is at home.
And it's almost their values that the core of what they're doing is
get transferred to your kid.
So how do you get that balance?
I decided to go part-time because my older boy, and even though I came back and I spent a lot of time with him, he said, I want you to open the door when I come home from school. It really hit me hard because I'm not a parent.
And he articulated it
Yes,
in
he
this
said
way.
it. He's saying, you're not at home for me. I want you to open the door, not the didi. So then I became a consultant and I could work around my schedule. We changed school, so they only came back at 4, by which time I was home. So they have a way to tell you, right? Now, again, I'm not saying every parent does this, but easiest is I've seen kids now, they're watching something on screen and eating. We never allowed this because the child doesn't know what he eats. In fact, I actually asked one of my didis to go. My younger one wouldn't know what he ate for lunch because little balls would be made. He would just pick it and put it in his mouth. Now, what went in that?
I think a lot of parenting is the boundaries, and I'm not saying we do it very well, but I think if you can set the right boundaries, and boundaries can be as simple as no phones on the table, or we will have a meal, one
Do
meal.
you guys have such rules?
We come to the dining
what
table
are the
with no
rules
phone.
in the Agrawal household?
So no phones on the dining table. We try and say one meal, at least dinner together. I don't think we're as successful. As older they get, the tougher it is there. What else?
I mean, I've been telling them at least once a week now we will do something as a family together. I think what we could have done better, and we were discussing this, that because they were both boys, all the extracurriculars were the same. We're very good as a family, but that one-on-one equation didn't really develop as well. So I'm telling him, like, there should be a day when I take Ved out, you take Aryan out. It shouldn't be together.
Yeah, we don't do enough of that. We go out with them.
Which is very important, I feel.
But it's a unit of 4 as against...
the child who can verbalize and get more, gets more. So in our case, our younger one does not push himself as much. So Aryan's always been able
But
to...
Aryan is more emotive, and
Yes.
so that's why.
So he manages to get his way around. I'm now seeing they're wanting to do different things.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I didn't know any better, right? Because I was like, boys, of course they want to play a sport, so put them into cricket camp. Little did, I mean, not that we refused, but maybe he didn't want to
And
do
now,
it.
what does Ved love to do?
He likes football. Now, I'm like saying now, let's go, pick up the sport, I'm too old. So again, we'll figure it. But
Yeah.
I think another thing I want to say is, I think what worked for both of us was we constantly wanted to learn to be better at what we were doing. We never knew what was good. I don't think there is one parenting tip. We tried to stay ahead of the game in everything. I mean, so both our kids have had some learning issues.
Yeah.
It's not like if it was major to push them back or not do well. We believed that they would do well eventually. So they weren't toppers in school. But they found
And
their
how
way.
were you able to sort of identify that, which is, this is the place that they needed help? Like, is there a way for parents to be able to go about it?
So I think, look, at one level, we have generally been very open and accepting of faults, whether it is our own faults or
Yeah.
our kids' faults. So I think it was early in our elder one's case, maybe class 4, 5.
He had a stammer.
There was a bit of a stammer that he had. We felt certain odd behaviors there. Otherwise, very sweet kid, nothing
Yeah.
wrong. And on a hunch, we said, and we had no idea, we have no history,
Yeah.
we don't know any of this stuff
Yeah.
there. And we said, no, we should go and test him. And initially, there was this denial. And I think that's the big one, especially in India. I think this denial that, no, my kid is fine and how can anything be wrong?
And you try to blame other
there,
things
Right, you blame other things. But I think being open to saying, okay, there's no harm in knowing what the reality is and getting help if required. Now, that help can be by way of therapy
Yeah.
or counselor or whatever else it may be. I think we did that.
And so there was a test first.
There was a test. You do something
There's a
called an
standardized
EdPsych, an educational psychology test, and it happens over 3-4 days.
I feel every child should
And
do
from
it.
there is when we learned for the first time, and that first time we learned, it was like our world is ended, because we were like, oh my God, how could this happen to us? You start blaming, yourself. We did something wrong. The reality is that's not true. So, and that's a hard part, and you kind of write down, and why me is the
Yeah.
feeling that you get,
Yeah.
right? But from there, then how do you saying, okay,
This is the situation.
this is the situation. Like in a business, you have to deal with stuff that happens. How do you now deal with this? And look, I always say that we are parents for the first time in our lives also. So it's not like,
Yeah.
and there's no textbook that I have
Yeah,
found.
there's
And
no prescription,
if you
yeah.
do find or write a book about
tell us,
parenting that works for everyone, I
Yeah.
will be the first one to buy it. But look, there's no easy answer. This is a
Yeah.
hard job to do in any form at all.
And there is no right or wrong.
And each kid is unique, right? Our kids are unique. Our kid had unique issues. Somebody else's kid could be fantastic academically. In fact, someone told us yesterday, we were chatting with a friend, and coincidentally, their son had the same challenge, but the manifestation of it was totally different. There was very high IQ, very low EQ. Ours was the reverse. Very high EQ and not the highest IQ. So there is no one size fits all
Fits all to
answer.
But I think
to
the
know that.
test also helped us change the way we approach education. So he was in one of these bigger schools, which was an old school, a lot of hardware, less software. We moved to a school which was smaller class size, more individualized learning. They have an individual learning plan, a lot of different kinds of goals beyond education.
It was it a national curriculum school?
Yeah,
Or
so
was
Both
it a,
are, both are national curriculum.
even now both of them went to the national
both are
curriculum?
national curriculum.
But what was different, like what you said on the software?
So on the software, I mean, more teachers involved. Initially, he had a shadow teacher. In case there would be issues of learning, he could go to her. Didn't need it, but there was support. There was a lot of trying to give him space to grow, more nurturing.
I think the teacher-children ratio in a
Yeah,
classroom, right?
also.
Do you have 40? When I grew up, we had 45 children in the class, right? And most schools during our
Correct.
time was the same.
At least 45, 50, 60 even.
Correct,
Yeah.
right? To me, I think we moved our kids from a 45 a class to a 25, 30 a class. Game changer. From a personal attention, the teachers actually knew the children there. They weren't having to look at when we went to meet them for a parent-teacher. They're not like
looking
"Acha,
up exactly,
who is
what's
Aryan
the-
or
yeah.
who is Ved. They knew what's going on. So I think that's the big one. the focus on just stuff outside of academics, which is not simply go and play cricket.
There was
or
no
go
rank,
and play,
for instance.
Go and play football. Like I remember, we always talk about this. There's a school we were evaluating and we didn't go there. And they were telling us of their philosophy. They had a 100-meter race. And they said how it worked is they set a time. So let's say 15 seconds. I'm just making up the time.
Sure.
And any kid who finished the race in 15 seconds won. So there was no Prachi,
So there was no number one,
there was no
number
Prachi
two.
versus Shiv versus Pronita business at all. And we were like, wow, what a different, refreshingly different. Now one could argue that this does not work in the real world.
There's a goal
etc.
for everybody.
But
The
it
goal is
also-
not to compete with each
But
other.
not just this, but even for Aryan and Ved, they had these individual plans, right? So they had goals they set in the beginning of the year, which were not academic. So if it was like Aryan's was, okay, I want to conquer my stammer by the end of the year. Then they formed these mentor-mentee groups. And it wasn't in class, it was across the batches.
And who took the initiative
The school.
on that?
So the school did. Now in some cases, I think parents have had to play a more proactive role to do it. In general, in a school, if you look at a classical national curriculum school, it's the teacher and that's it. So
Yeah,
if
that's
you get
about it.
lucky with a great teacher,
You build a rapport.
you've made it. But if you don't, then good luck.
Then you don't have a mentor.
Whereas
also.
to me, in an ideal world, yes, there's a role of a teacher is to teach. And even that now in the world of technology, is it really knowledge or,
Right.
teaching is going to change. But then you need some form of a mentor or a guide or a counselor or whichever way you see it,
that you can actually speak outside of the classroom.
who I can
as
go
well.
to and say, look, I'm having a challenge with bullying or,
And you can open up,
I can
yeah.
open up and I can talk more personally. And a lot of it is also, now one is one-to-one mentoring, which maybe economically can be a challenge for a school. But what if you could get 5 peers from 3 different classes, say class 6, 7, 8, together in a group, almost group mentoring me. So I'm learning to say, she was in class 8 and she's been through this as well. So I'm not the only one there.
And so these groups were formed with interest? Or
No, just
they
randomly.
They put them together.
randomly.
Yeah, so this is not
Wonderful,
about
There were
you
no
like sports,
areas of-
so you're
yeah.
together. It was just
And you
kids.
come with your problem. So I remember one of Aryan's classmates, for instance, his parents were separating, and there was a lot of presentation that child did. And there were other kids who had also gone through it. So they could share experiences, right? And I think it also gets your child aware that this happens in another world. It's not perfect, and it's nothing wrong if parents are splitting, right?
I think the broader issue is in a country like India, we are over obsessed about education and about grades
Outcomes,
or
yeah.
I would say IQ,
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there. In the real world, IQ matters. I'm not saying IQ doesn't
Yeah.
matter, but it is your EQ, it is the other stuff that really
Exactly.
helps there. I don't think schools in general do a great job of really focusing on the
Inculcating
other
that
stuff,
EQ
right?
piece.
That's almost like it happens on the side.
either through some exposure or just on the side.
Yeah, it happens almost unplanned.
Yeah.
And
So-
we don't realize sometimes, like again, my older boy, when he was doing some speech therapy, he told the teacher that it's not like we were comparing him. He said, my parents asked me how much my best friend got. He's a topper. In his head, he was assuming I wanted him to be the topper. I was just generally inquiring. Right? I didn't want to put that pressure. When she said it to me, I'm like, oh my God, yes, he will see it that way because I'm obviously asking about this friend who tops all the time. So he's like, I never felt I could be there. So a lot of anxiety builds up then, right?
I think
So a lot of this comparison piece that you talked about, does that happen today a lot in schools? Like one is of course marks, but because of say social media, there is also comparison of our lives. Has that ever been a conversation?
I don't think it happens as much
Yeah.
with us, but it is a big issue.
one.
And a lot of this is parents really living out their dreams through their
their
kids,
children.
right? Because I didn't make it to X college. I need to do everything I can to look at, and I think the whole college application process now for kids who are going overseas, and the focus is a bit of a rat race right now, right? And this is a parallel world happening outside of the school system. today,
Yeah.
right.
At least
So
the college
if
prep
I
piece,
think
yeah.
about schooling post class 9. The classroom is incidental and your grades you have to get enough to get by. But the focus is completely on how do I now package myself as, a great candidate to be going into a college.
Yeah, yeah.
Now schools have got college counselors. Even, most schools now have them. But a lot of this is happening outside, and it's very unnatural, right? All of a sudden in class 10 or class 12, a child starts not-for-profit and is solving
Who's
world
cured cancer.
peace or something, which is nice. I mean, and I'm sure some kids have actually
been able to sort of break out.
But to me, it's just unreal. And what are you teaching the kids, right? That you have to just package all of
and posture for a certain outcome, and then it's not.
Yeah. Whereas if you could genuinely build this into your curriculum or into your school life, I think that the transition is much easier.
And also what we found, like when we were going through college counseling for our older child.
And how did you actually? When did you start that?
We started late. We started in class 11, though we had someone in class 10
and what would have been ideal?
9, they say, is when it's ideal. You have enough time to show result. But I remember this one counselor we met who said basically he would fill up the form. And our child turned around to us and said, I want to do it myself. How does he know what I want out of this course? Right?
I disagree with what she said on what is ideal. Ideal is when you are like 5 years old.
Okay, say more. What do you mean?
You cannot, if I have grown up a certain way and I've been in, and I'm now 16, suddenly you say, no, Shiv, now, by the way, you have to repackage yourself as somebody else. It's just fake. It's not real. Today, it's two worlds. You've got the school world.
Yeah.
And then you've got a parallel education world, which is doing all of this other stuff, right? Starting from your tuitions, right?
There is more extracurricular.
So I don't know a child today.
Summer program.
Yeah, I don't know a single child who does not do tuition outside. Not one. And I'm talking of the brightest of brightest kids. Summer school, and then you do this, I'll start a business, I'll help you do an NGO, I'll help you write your essays.
And then there is, of course, the college prep entire.
Right. So if you're able to kind of build all of this in, right? Why should a kid have to study after if I'm going in to school at 8 o'clock in the morning?
And if you were to think of it, if a school actually has a student for like 12 to 15 years at least, if it's like K through 12 and pre-K as well. So if there is one institution along or one person or one unit which is outside of the parents which could know the child better is actually the school. And so this is also something at the school, at the Anandi School, we're trying to do is that we'll have integrated college prep where you don't do it as a profile that you're building on the side, but through the field model where you're actually building a lot of the projects every semester, exposes you to the right things at the right ages. And then when you're in high school, it actually will help you understand which direction you want to follow. And hopefully the teachers will also be able to opine a lot more because they would have seen an Aryan or a Ved through like 10 and 12 years of school.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And so that they don't have to spend times over the weekends doing this, and sometimes maybe just have time to get bored.
And sometimes the kids don't do it, by the way, it's outsourced.
Yeah.
So I know of people who have paid a lot of money to get their common app written, right? The main essay for the college, right? Who will know your story better than yourself?
Yeah.
And maybe your parents help you edit,
Exactly.
right? But to outsource something like this, or even projects, like, you will show you've done this social initiative, entirely done by someone else. I think colleges are also getting smart in reading
smarter about it. Yes. And especially when some of these things like spring in the 9th grade or like 11th grade suddenly.
So in your school, is your plan to do this from like early on? Or?
So we'll do it early on in projects which are a lot less technical and probably not as much as trying to step out of the school in the junior school. But as you get into middle years program and then high school, you can actually have mentors who are like Pronita and Shiv, where if you can do a project with them for an entire semester, if they can dedicate a couple of hours every week. So that can happen middle years onward. So the idea is, of course, you learn in context, but the other thing is if you can also expose them to folks who are from different industries, that could also help inform them a little bit about what's happening out there. Because today, it's a function of the access of your parents.
Yes, very
so
true.
If you're privileged, you will get that access, you'll know exactly what to do. But so for say someone like me, I mean, my parents and me, we didn't know any better than engineering. So I ended up doing electrical engineering, but did I have to do it? I don't think so. I wish I studied economics. I don't know if I would have been able to like you, but that was, in hindsight, I wish I probably
knew better. But a very good base with engineering.
Yeah, probably.
And I think again, the point I said earlier, that all of us are parents for the first time.
Yeah.
So some of us may be lucky that we are more exposed and we'll take the right calls. Many of us are not like that and we are not exposed. So, but the role of the school, because as a school, you've seen this template a million times over. You've seen the same kids.
Yeah.
So if you're able to then guide us and say that, look, so if I was a parent
But actually on that, like, do you think like the role of a school maybe when you were growing up versus the role of a school now, it probably might be the same. Maybe they're doing the same things, maybe they're doing incrementally more things. Do you think that the role has, should be different now versus what it was before?
Completely.
Yeah.
Because
And to what extent?
Because when we grew up, you could only learn through a classroom, through the book. I don't need to learn economics or accounting in the class anymore. I've got YouTube to teach me that, and I've got all kinds of places I can go to learn that. So what am I learning is the conversation, this critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
The ability to ask the right questions.
Are you making me more curious?
Mostly in bigger cities, we are all like double income nuclear families.
Yeah.
And if they're double income, then mom and dad are basically coming back at 5 or 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time is actually spent in school. So
Yeah.
maybe part parenting, or I don't know if it's safe to say that, part parenting is somewhere done maybe in the school premises itself.
It has to, right? Because then I'm sending my child out for like 8 hours in a day. If after 12 years of doing that for 8 hours a day, you tell me that my child is not ready for the real world, then we have to question something in the system.
The amount of time which is actually spent.
Then maybe we could have gone another way there. So
some 30 or 40,000 hours actually of your life are actually spent in school.
now, if you talk to most children today and you tell them what do you like about school, there's only one answer: friends. So there is the social side which is absolutely important to build. But why is nobody saying that, wow, I learned something unique, or I did something that was so much fun that I want to come back and do it? I just don't hear that happening, right? So
and this seems to be a theme across almost all schools, regardless of curriculum.
But I also blame the parents, because a lot of it is you're judging how good your child is by the grade sheet. You're not seeing it in terms of a bravery act.
Finish line ek hi hai, in a way.
But again,
So then everyone's trying to,
How
run the
many
same
stars
race.
did you get? And that's it.
metric
Whereas your college admission actually sees
It's
that.
so
I would
holistic.
Keep telling my child this, that if you show an upward curve, that's all that matters. You don't want to peak early and then fall.
So metric of success, right? Like in a business, we'll have defined. As parents, I think you need to, at some stage, you're not going to do it when your child is born, because that won't happen. But you need to be clear of saying, okay, if you have to visualize and say, okay, now my child is 18 years old, what would I define as success as a parent? Now, for somebody, it may be, like she said, A stars or 90% or whatever. For me personally, no. I don't want him to fail. And I want him to go into a good college. But I want to see a child who's genuinely kind, who's considerate, is articulate.
One of the teachers told us
yeah.
this. If you can teach him guile and resilience, you've done an excellent job. And I think at least our older one is very resilient.
And what do you think built some of those things?
I mean,
And
some of
because
the
in a
challenges
way-
he's had.
So I remember this
because a lot of
yeah.
parents now talk a little bit about saying that, and it's also true, right? Because if you were to just think macro wise, it took about 15 years to adopt a technology. Now it is about 2 years. So you truly have to be resilient, and you have to know how to keep learning and be curious. The curiosity lesson that you were talking about. So what were some parts on the resilience piece actually which helped build Aryan that?
So I'll say two things, right? One is, in general, resilience is taught by adversity, right? So for us, Aryan went through stuff that happened, right? And that really taught him resilience. And we say, thank God it happened early on, right? And he's had his own journey, be it his learning issues or other stuff he happened to him in school, that I feel that today he's ready to fly, and he's learned the hard way. If the real challenge is, you can't fake adversity. You can't suddenly now, in our kind of life, if I say sorry,
or create some sort of scarcity.
It's nice to say all this, it doesn't happen in real life. So how do you build resilience without adversity, right? And then the question becomes, what is the role a parent can play? Which could be, no, there's not unlimited, feeding the monster in that sense, be it on, technology or money or whatever else it could be. And for the school, how do you almost create, in a safe space, how do you create a sense of adversity to say, okay, so if you go on a camp and you're going on a trek, which is not easy. Now that's adversity you have to conquer.
And inculcate some sense of maybe, or the love for some pursuit.
Yes.
Now for Aryan, it was like his YouTube channel, right? And For Ved, I guess it is now football. And so how does maybe the school as well as the parent work together to be able to find them that path?
So how many schools would know that Aryan was passionate about his YouTube channel? I suspect most schools would not even know. And that's the starting point, right? Do you know your child beyond,
But
what
his
is he?
school encouraged him. Even when in his mentor-mentee, when he spoke of it, and we didn't even see it that way. And again, why I'm bringing it up is because this is a child who stammers, holds these conversations
And he's
with
doing
people,
an entire thing on YouTube
and you can't
in
tell,
content.
right?
Yeah.
So again, and how did it start? Because he was obsessed about cricket, realized very early he couldn't play it to a professional level. COVID happened, cricket camp shut down. So then his passion came out through a creative side,
Yeah.
right? And I think he's also learned to accept, like I keep telling him, like the other day for an exam, he's saying, I study so much, another friend will study 2 hours and get the same marks. And I said, Arya, not everybody's good at everything, right? So you may need to work harder in academics, but your media side, for instance, none of your friends can do. So you have to know your strengths, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm also realizing is also there has been so much thought of when you went through the entire some of the challenges after being tested, etc., all of that, and then helping Aryan also realize what he's good at, and now he's going to a great college. So that's been a great outcome. So if there is a parent who's watching this and they may be thinking about it, so what is the hardware and software of it? Which is, what are the more tactical things to do as a parent, and what are the top 2 things that you would say to keep in mind while they're raising a child with some of these challenges?
I would say that one is that the parents need to be self-aware themselves, right? They need to accept that every kid is going to be different, and they need to figure out their kid and what they want. Are they really pushing their ambition down their,
Parents' life, child's life.
Child's life, or is the kid evolving? I think that's the first step, because if you don't have that, everything else will not work, right? It's then to now. You have to get a balance. Now again, we are parents who are big believers in balance. We are not academic. I remember, in the middle of exams, Aryan was getting stressed out and I took out my class 7 report card, which was quite a disaster. In reality, I was not a topper.
And you had it?
Yeah.
She had kept it, I think, just to kind of spite me. She must have kept it at some stage there. And we showed it to him and he felt good. He was like, oh, so then you guys are not perfect, right? And we were like, like I told him about a funny incident. I did get suspended from school once because I walked in playing the guitar into a classroom. And he was like, you got suspended because, you are so good right now, etc. there. And I said, no, it's now I'm not going to encourage him to do silly stuff.
And this is such an important piece to show them also that you are human,
So
and then you have failed as well.
Yeah, vulnerability, right? Like, no, we are also, struggling. We don't know what to do. What do you think there? So I think that's the first. Other is openness. I love the fact that with our children, I'm not saying anything happens and the next minute they're coming to us and telling us everything. That doesn't happen with anyone. But I think there is no fear of judgment. So if they came and told us, oh, we did this bad thing in school, now I could react 2 ways. I'm like, how dare you? And I could go into a morality lecture to him. And which means next time, guess what? He's never coming to me to say a thing. Or I'm like, inside me, I'm like, oh my God. But outside, I'm like, okay. You know what? By the way, I did this also. But here's, something that I learned from it. Don't do X, don't do Y. So a little bit of a life lesson without being preachy. I think the other thing I said is that children do what they see, not what they are told. I've realized that the hard way. I have not been good at my own weight management, right? As you can tell. And if I am now going to be a role, if I'm going to tell my kid, oh, you must go to the gym and exercise and eat healthy, source credibility is low.
They're going to do what they see. What they see their parents do.
If I really want them to be healthy, I need to get healthy first. Right? So I would say it's some of that stuff there. Hardware, I would say, of course, you need to provide them platforms, right? But you can't make it too easy for them. Something she said earlier about, right? You can give them a counselor, but the counselor doesn't need to write their essay or their application. So you have to decide what you want. Like when we went through the college application process last 2-3 years, we saw it as a good way to help him grow. Right? Of course, the end goal was to get into a college.
But it could have gone 2 ways, right? Which is it absolutely becomes an obsession, which stresses you out. The way it used to happen, 10th board exam hai, 12th board exam hai, or find a way to be able to discover your interests.
To balance it, and I think also we continuously learned, so we weren't scared of getting professional help when we needed it. This whole, stigma that, my child goes for counseling wasn't there.
Yeah, so we've been, for example, our child has been seeing a counselor for the last year and a half. And earlier it was very odd because we were like, how can you see a counselor? And, it's in the Indian society.
But how did that come up? Which is, he came up to you or you guys then discussed?
He went through some stuff in school.
Yeah.
Right? And originally he was not in a good place.
Yeah.
So we said, okay. So school and us talked about it and we said, look, maybe he should do few sessions of counseling. Now, we could have stopped at 4 sessions just to tick a box and been done. But we saw him helping. So today he does counseling 1 hour a week.
He looks forward to it.
He's never cancelled a counseling class over there.
Ever.
This is just someone talking. This is not someone we knew. It's
and
not
she's
us.
helped him, grow, get ready for college. Some of the fears we had, will he be able to go and have that guile? Will he be bullied in college there? Because he's a softer child. He's not someone who will, just go and bash someone up if, that person doesn't agree with him. But I think he's really become a young adult with her. We've, I guess, supported him, but there was this unbiased person, because he'll always say, you're a parent, you will always say this to me because you're my mother.
So I think
but he had the emotional awareness actually to talk about this.
I think openness to accept, firstly, if there is an issue, or even if there's not an issue, that okay, what is it today? And then doing something about it. I think a lot of parents, and I'm going to say this more in the Indian context, we live in denial. कि नहीं हमारा बच्चा ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है, right? Everything is okay over there. You want to portray to the world. You cannot.
It's also this thinking ना हमारे लिए चल गया तो फिर आगे भी चल जाएगा.
Yeah.
No, we faced a lot of resistance at home. Our parents, for instance, thought we had a name for everything. They're like, what is this? I mean, even y'all were like this. But as I said, actually every person should be tested. I see some of me in Aryan, when I couldn't write on a line, I didn't know I had dysgraphia. Maybe I didn't, but the fact that he has dysgraphia, I can't beat him to it, right? He can't draw a nice biology diagram. Then, through help, he learned if he just boxes it, makes a geometric version of it, easier, right?
Yeah. So at least when you're aware, you know the tools around it to be able
how to use it.
Get to the outcome of it. Yeah.
And I think today, tools is not an issue. There are enough tools. The first step is
awareness,
to accept,
to at least know.
Awareness and acceptance to actually
in fact,
do
the
something
school,
about
when we changed school, they said, we're amazed that it's not even a problem and you're all thinking of how it can become a problem. Because we never wanted to make it a problem. We said we have to stay ahead of it so that he just never gets into that worst zone.
I think having to go back to school, having changed a school, and they're both the same
caliber?
national board.
Yeah, board.
They're both well-known schools, they're reputed schools, household
names. But the
names.
teacher ratio, for example, was better, so there was more personalized in one.
And to what Pronita said about the nurturing approach to a teacher.
There was more initiative anyway.
Yeah.
It is a nurturing environment.
Understood.
So I think that is super, and we saw that difference automatically happen.
And if I know I don't like comparing, but if I see both my kids to their peer in the other school, these kids are far ahead in terms of just managing in the real world.
And this is part of, of course, parents, but also the school and the environment
and
there.
Giving them that exposure to other things, that grades are not everything, right?
Yeah.
I think it's most.
Is that an active conversation at school? How do they do it?
They don't rank.
They don't rank, you mentioned.
Nobody asking you. I remember in the old school, I would see something in class 3, who's topped in English.
So in fact, I don't know who's come first in his class or second or third or anything. I don't know what is. Sometimes we ask, is he kind of average, above average? Where is he in the class?
They won't tell you ever.
And they'll be vague about it.
Yeah.
Which actually,
interesting.
So I think this metric-driven approach to education that all of us have grown up with, because we were defined by 90% in class 10.
Then you're a certain type of person.
Correct.
That is what you get tagged.
And the truth is that is what led to you doing an engineering or being etc. over there.
Yeah, because if you get above a certain marks, then aap science karo and then aap engineering karo. Maybe switching gears a little bit, we all are in now type of offices or workplaces and also the condos, etc. All of that is a very protected environment in a way, right? You basically come from school in a school bus or you have a car dropping you or picking you up. then you go to a class, and then there's someone chaperoning you all the time. And maybe part of it is also safety, right? When, for example, you were growing up or I was growing up, there was a lot of comfort that my mom said, like, chal ke aana, even if it's a 30-minute walk, you'll be fine. And so part of it is also, can you really program that real world exposure? Because in a way, if you're going from one protected environment to the other, how do you actually find the confidence that now that Aryan is going to go to college, and when he's going to be fully on his own, he has to, buy grocery by himself, he has to pay rent or whatever. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's a big issue, and I don't think we've done enough about it.
I don't think anybody is doing enough.
I think this
It's
one
also harder to solve for this with like busy schedules, big city, and the environments that we live in.
What does a kid do in their me time? Right now, if that kid, if the only thing the kid is doing is sort of scrolling reels, then that's, so how do they even have me time, or is it like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, sleep, done, good night, and is that done? Right? You have to create opportunities, whether it is send them to a camp or do stuff outside of what would be
That they're thinking for themselves.
even holidays, right, that you go for. We could easily land up only going to nice glitzy places, but what are you really teaching them? Like somebody had told me this, and it's so true, right? A 2-week holiday with parents is 10x more learning if it was done properly than being in school for 2 weeks, right? Now, one is that says something about schools. That's a different issue.
Yeah.
But so what kind of holidays do you do, right? So if you're in a safari, for example, or now I'm not saying go to a village and start feeding people, because that's again nice to say.
Yeah, it is also might not be authentic in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah. We spoke a little bit about college prep as well, right? And it was a full process. I'm sure you also worked with a college counselor. What was that process like? Did you go through interviewing a lot of folks? How did you guys find a fit? And then just time-wise as well, did you budget time for Aryan to then work on it?
So we met 3-4 people who we had heard were good. We consciously chose someone who took fewer students, who let the child be himself. I think what worked with this particular counselor was she really let Aryan be himself and not get anxious about the process. So initially, I mean, we were very keen that he goes to the UK, and we didn't want him to go to the US because we thought it was closer, natural fears, your first child going, we can go help him settle in. And then our school actually said, no, for a child like him, he has to go to the US. I actually think they didn't let us apply to the UK because his, of course, admission
And what
to
is
US
that
happened.
thing with the US though? Sorry, just
Because there's like 10 activities you need to do, and those activities have to be showing that you have been an entrepreneur. Because I
You're referring to how the US is different from the
US
UK?
is different, and why this
Because
was
there are
US
activities.
is, the system is just more holistic. It's more open. It is not.
It's not one-dimensional.
It's not
in
one
being
that
able
if I
to
go and
measure
study,
the
engineering,
potential.
that's all. I heard of someone the other day who went in doing a psychology major and finished with a computer science major, got a job at Apple at the end of that, right?
So it's
in
not
4
linear.
years. So I think that, and as an 18-year-old kid,
You don't know.
I mean,
You don't know. You
don't
have an
know.
inkling of acha ye pasand hai, but you don't know actually.
You don't know that, right? So I think the US helps you do that.
And chart your own degree in some ways, right? So like when I went to the US, it was very prescriptive. I mean, it still let you change, but I had to do certain courses. When Aryan goes, he'll have a prerequisite to show he has a quant ability, but it doesn't mean he has to do calculus, for instance, right? He can measure it through something else. So it's far more open to the child. So for instance, a science student will probably find it easier to do calculus. A business student may not, right? So one is, and which is why the school said for a child like him, because he's so, interested in many things, let him go, to the US. I was talking of the admission process where it is intimidating for a parent because you have to do these so-called 10 activities. There is, of course, then your grades. You do test certain things. You do these advanced courses if you're doing the national curriculum. So it's a lot of work. But what I liked with our counselor is she let him choose his path, and of course a lot of guidance came from us. We didn't, because Aryan gets conscious, for instance, we did not even do any of the SATs or APs, the advanced placements?
I think, again, going back to schools, I think if you can have a more integrated model between the school and the counselor, I think that would only help.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than
Because then there is just that one influencer in that sense that who's also
Absolutely.
working with the student.
If let's say the counselor knows that Aryan needs to work on a YouTube channel, and if the school doesn't, there's dissonance, right?
But you'll also end up doing a lot of double work because you have to do what you have to do
Yeah.
at school and you have to do what you have to do for college.
Correct.
Which is why I say something like the IB curriculum, where they have this theory of knowledge paper, right?
Yeah.
Now, every child
okay.
will want to publish. Aryan had a paper, right? But it wasn't part of his course curriculum.
So he had to do it on top of it.
Yeah. If it is part of your course curriculum, it's not extra work.
Yeah.
Because the 12th, we have to understand also the kids have to have good grades, right? So there's that pressure. On top of that, now if you say, okay, do 2 internships and a essay, and then I have to go into the college individual essays, then I have to do my SAT and it's just unending.
Yeah.
It's like hard, right?
And then how did you guys pick? Like, say, for example, in the beginning, I don't know if it came on camera, was, he's going to pursue a business degree, and it's at a certain college, right? How did you guys think about, okay, this is a good college to go to, and this is a good fit for Aryan specifically?
So I think counselor plays an important role there. One is they make you go through a test, like a psychometric test.
Like
to
an
decide,
aptitude or
test to
fit
figure
test.
out. So let's say business. Now, he was not a STEM student, for example. We knew for sure. So we picked business. Then
he also picked it. He liked business.
Yeah, then the idea is to kind of build a profile based on that. So, he did a small little startup that he did.
He was doing the visits to different
absolutely.
companies and factories,
in fact,
right?
That came out of a real need because he did 3 internships, which most children do 1 or 2 internships before college.
And physical.
We did 3 internships in very diverse industries, right? And he just said those were my best 2
years of learning.
My 2 weeks of, I just had the most fun. I was not sleeping by the end of that.
And what were these internships?
So, one, we did something in an edtech company in London, right? It was a startup.
Nice.
Solving a D&I issue through technology, right? So he did that.
So he was supposed to solve that problem with a product.
Yeah, and it was an 8-member startup. He worked with everybody, so he got exposure to all functions there, 2 weeks. 1 week he was remotely here in India. 1 week actually we combined it with a holiday and he was there, which was superb. Another one was with Masters Union, right? And there again, Masters Union was building out summer courses for children.
A student ambassadorship program.
So he helped them build a student ambassadorship program.
Like at schools.
Absolutely. So like a marketing program for those schools,
yeah.
which was very relevant.
Also because he was at a school, so he probably knew how to navigate that.
And the third, again, remember we said what was his passion? Cricket.
Yeah.
So he worked with Delhi Capitals, the IPL team for 2 weeks, and as you can imagine, he was like, oh my god, wow. Right, so sports management and what does it take, and the operation sides of managing.
And then he also built content, right? Like, and he interviewed Sehwag for
totally. So he had his
channel.
YouTube channel, and I remember at the time of application, he had 2,600 subscribers, which for a 17-year-old kid is
a lot, and it's hard to get to that number.
Absolutely, right? And he did it organically, the
without
right way.
spending any,
Completely.
No, and he'd sometimes come to us and say, get us a good editor, right? And we said, no, this is a homegrown channel, and that's what the
so this
schools
was,
will
in fact,
see.
I remember him saying that for me to really do a good job, I need a professional editor, and we said, no.
You do it yourself.
You do it yourself.
And man, it's tough. Like now that I'm doing some of the content and production and editing stuff, if not for the team, behind the camera here, I can't imagine how tough it could be. So chops to him to be able to learn that.
So, he did that.
He did a social
like I said, he did this business, and that business came out of the inside that he came so much from real world experiences.
Exposure,
And he said, why can I not do this for my classmates? So he helped organize workplace visits to companies like Google, for example, we went to, or to...
And then so he would get sign-ups from
schools,
and then he
would tie up with the company.
And in some ways also create the content in terms of tell the company that this is what my friends want to learn, right? Or my classmates want to learn.
So they went to, how many children have gone to a factory and seeing a car being made from scratch? So, we took them to the Hero factory, or rather he took his classmates to a Hero factory. Of course, we helped with some introductions to get it done. But then taking them there 2-3 hours, really walking the shop floor. there. You go to Google and you learn about AI.
He went to
and you hear
architecture
it
firm.
And
there.
it's interesting that he was able to think that, I had such a great experience and this was a problem because I was not able to probably find these opportunities. So why not actually build for it?
Yeah.
And
this
enable other
actually
school
came
students.
from his counselor, because the counselor had something called a passion project, and he told him, what are the real challenges you face in your day-to-day living? And one of them was, how do I find a good internship if it's not for my dad? My dad is in the HR space, so he can find me.
So there is
and
some
it's a
access.
real challenge, right?
Yeah.
In schools that
Yeah.
you don't find unless
It
you're
is true.
connected.
It is true. I mean,
Especially for high
all the
school
exposure
students.
that you get is actually all a function of the access that your parents
Yeah.
might bring.
No, like I'll tell you, even at the World Bank,
Yeah.
we wouldn't want to take interns because it's a lot of work, right? And especially if you're in the 9th and 10th, you're teaching them. And
Yeah.
you have to have the time to teach
So
them.
To
he
be
came
able
up
to
with
do
this
that.
thought of a shadowing, that can we just shadow, so could somebody shadow Prachi for a day, day in the life of Prachi, and I'm sure that learning is immense if you can make that work.
Yeah.
So I think so that became, for example, his project. Now it was not monetized.
Yeah.
We could monetize this very easily going forward.
And we tell him, like when
And,
you go to college, continue it.
But so he built that business. He had this YouTube thing, which was about really, I'm someone who had a stammer, I love cricket. You put the two together and you've got this YouTube channel there. So I think the one thing of this college application is uniqueness, right? And a counselor needs to be able to figure out, to say, okay, this is a kid.
And how can you show that personal graph in a way?
Absolutely.
Which
And I
is
think
a lot
that,
more unique
I would
to
say
you.
that came through, and credit to our counselor to be able to
Let him be.
help. Because look, we have not applied to the, we've studied, out, but, in today's world, we've not
Yeah.
applied there.
And also what has happened is it has gotten a lot more competitive, because if you were to
Yes.
think of it, the supply has stayed the same, which is it's the same top 20, 30, 40 colleges that everyone wants to go to.
Yeah.
But the number of people or the students who have aspiration to go there has now doubled, tripled,
And I think
so on.
how
so that's
this
it's more
college also
competitive.
happened,
Yeah.
even the college he's going to is a very experiential college. So 2 semesters he's going to go through a co-op program where he works. So I think that fit also happened. The
And
college
was this
saw,
a more like conscious choice
Yes.
to be able to
Yes.
choose that?
So we ED sort of early decision at this college.
Yeah.
And it was because, literally 12 out of 48 months he will be working in a real job, not an internship, in a real job. He will do
outside
that.
of the country.
And this comes at the end of the program, or
No, it's actually
Second and third year.
second and
year.
third? Oh, interesting.
And so we said, okay, if at the end of college, if you could have got 1 year of real experience, and of course all the academic stuff that you go through. Now, it was not like the Ivy League college, right? But for him, and again as parents, you have to find the right fit. So what the counselor does or did for us is said there are 3 sets of schools. There is a stretch school, there's a match, and there's a
high probability.
like a high probability school. So she, with her experience and then understanding Aryan, said, okay, here are your 5 stretch, 10 match, 10 high probability
Yeah.
there. Now then you have to figure out to
And
say,
then
okay.
we also did college visits. So we took him to see whether he liked.
So he was also able to
Yes.
experience a little bit what the campus life
Yes.
is, and
Yeah.
so he was also maybe more brought into it when he was
and
trying
he
to build
also
some
filled
of the.
in, at some point I think he had to fill a survey where he had to say, is he a city kid or a rural kid? Does he want to go to campus, or is he okay going to a
Yeah.
non-campus? So does he want to be near a big town? So he chose Boston because he's like, it's a student town. He just liked the vibe of Boston. So, it worked out. We were lucky.
Yeah.
But it all fitted in, and I think what our counselor did
It's just
was
going to be very cold
she
though,
gave,
that's it.
she gave us a structure to follow.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel as burdensome when we had to fill it in.
I want to ask you guys a question about just modern parenting. There was part where early on in our chat you mentioned about there is this intention of always wanting to get better. So the part around just being curious as parents. What are places where you think modern parenting has gone absolutely wrong?
A lot of places,
I know.
I think what we said earlier, over-parenting in the real world and under-parenting in the
virtual
digital
world.
world, in the virtual world, right? I think that's one.
It's a big one.
I think helicoptering it was so-called
Like
helicopter.
structuring the whole day. Like I know
Over
parents,
scheduling kids and
like at the age of 2, will learn a language. Why?
that you have to, piano has to be learnt at, when you're 5 years old.
And this free play. Again, I read this book, Parenting in the Age of Anxiety, I think it's called. Oh my God, it just opens up. You can see what the child goes through. You're like, zillions of classes.
Yeah.
I'll do taekwondo, I'll be the black belt here, and I'll be this, and I'll
one after
be
the
doing
other,
one-
basically running from.
Where's the child's time to, he said that, to know himself, right?
And this is something actually just yesterday we were talking about is this thing where a lot of, aspirational, successful, ambitious parents, generally who've also done well themselves, are really prone to doing this, which is over-scheduling kids, that they also don't have time to just be bored.
Yeah.
And some of these things is just like these creative things or magic moments also come through moments of stillness, where you're not doing a lot and there is not a lot of stimulation which is constantly happening. So one is of course, over and under parenting in some situations, one is over scheduling. The other thing I have realized, I don't know if it's right or wrong, is that also over engineering every interaction and emotion.
True.
Which is analyzing a lot. And of course, I'm not a parent yet, but I see a lot of my friends who are millennial parents, who would have a lot of theories about every small interaction, right from what is happening, what is the right way to teach them so and so. And if I look back at my own parents, they also had me when they were probably just kids themselves at 22 and 25. Yeah. So maybe some of that is part, but what do you guys think? Does that happen very often of over-engineering?
I think, there's a lot of literature out there now. There's
Which
a lot
is
of
available.
gurus on parenting. So, and anyone who tells me, I'm skeptical of people who saying, no, there is no one way to do it. Every kid is unique. Every parent is unique. Every context, every family context is unique, right? So I think it's about balanced parenting, right? That you need to find, if you over-engineer things, it's not. Equally, if you let it all be and say, let them grow up and they will be fine because I grew up like that. Sure, they will grow up, but then you may not,
It's also a different world. I mean, in a way, there was a lot more safety. There were not a lot of these vices like social media and tech so much. And so the unpredictable nature of growing up didn't
think you also have to understand your child and see what he or she is feeling. I mean, I think when we grew up, it was very different. Today, the child has a mind of his own.
Yeah.
And you have to put so it's not about getting that perfect kid.
And that's
but
why the
being aware
authoritarian way
doesn't work.
Couldn't probably.
My child will push me back. So if you're shouting, I'm not having a conversation with you. Right? And I'll say it myself. I used to shout a lot. I'm learning because I know it didn't go the right way.
But
and
do you think the other end of it, like gentle parenting, works in India?
No, there's a balance.
We have this struggle. Like, did we push our kids enough? Right, because maybe they had issues and we were gentle with them. So I would certainly put us in the category of being gentle parents. We occasionally sit up and think maybe we should have pushed it more.
They tell us.
Maybe he could have gone to even a better college.
No, our child's telling us now that my profile, my friends are telling me I underpitch, and I'm like, Aryan, it's okay. You're going to a great college where you will at least really flourish, right, and be something that you want to be, right? Instead of going and, then struggling to keep up, right?
Today I am this monster. I take away your phone and I do all kinds of crazy things. And tomorrow, partly because I'm in a good mood and something good has happened to me at work, and you've generally been a good girl, I'm showering you with the latest iPhone and doing all of that. What in your head, as it is, your mind is in your like, okay, I don't know. So the linkage of reward and of effort versus reward.
Incentive.
Right? How do you create that early on in limited ways? And it's not just about money and giving things.
Yeah.
But when do you appreciate?
And actually being able to earn.
Yeah.
I mean, not earn as in money, but being able to earn what you really want, I think is a great skill even in this like protected environments or privileged environments, to be able to build some sort of resilience and that love for pursuit. And I think there are ways to, like, smaller ways to doing it, right? Like if you want so and so, like, hey, wait, or maybe work on it, and then maybe you get there.
Yeah.
So what would be, maybe final question, what would be some 2 or 3 resources? It could be books, it could be, I don't know, like some, authors or influencers who you've probably followed or read books of, which have helped you over the last, say, 5 or 6 years?
I don't have one particular place.
I would say one is get help even if you're not in a crisis, right? Now that help could be by way of therapy, counselor, whichever way. So don't be shy about this. It's not a taboo. You don't have to tell the world that I'm going and seeing a therapist, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's for yourself as a parent, like we do parent therapy. Now, I would like to say that we are okay, we're good parents, but
Yeah.
we still do parent therapy because we don't know what we have never sent a kid to college before, and we're going to go through an empty nest situation, and how is that going to play out for us there? So
Yeah.
I think be open to accepting help
professional
of professionals, right? I think would be one big one there. I think, look, there's a lot out there. There are some great books that one reads on parenting.
I would say
styles.
don't be in denial.
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents who will blame the systems. I mean, we did it initially. Oh, bad school, I won't say bad school, wrong school, didn't let him get, nurtured properly. But you have to, it's okay. Like as Shiv said, that, when we first heard, we thought our world had ended, right? And then we're like, why not us? Because we can be advocates to other parents.
Yeah.
And I don't even shy away from telling people the issues my kids have, because I think I have learned and I'd want to give that knowledge to others.
And it can also be a little intimidating, but if there is a community or resources, then it becomes
In
easier
fact,
for also
Aryan-
parents to talk about it. And if you don't talk about it, you can't get
In
help
fact,
for
Aryan
it.
in his school was mentoring a child like him,
Yeah.
right? And it helped that child, because he saw, okay, there's another older bhaiya who's like me and he's doing fine in school.
I think also if you could almost create like not a peer parenting group, but if I, let's say, was the parent of a 13-year-old and I had access to parents of a 15, 16-year-old, and if they could generally be my coach, counselor, guide, whatever, to kind of say
a
that,
community of
Abhi, this
practice.
is okay, he's going to be like this, so accept it. But you know what, if I was you, I would, so shared experiences. I don't need advice, right? As parents, I don't need someone telling me do this or do that. If you can share to say, look, this is what worked for me. I would never tell, I try not to tell people to say, you must,
Ye aise karo.
aise karo. I think it's just bad. It's actually irresponsible to do that. But if I'm able to say, look, this is what worked for me. My kid was like this, I didn't push hard enough, or I pushed less or more.
And it's also a lot more relatable, because those 3 years also more tactically you will also be able to share a little more what they can follow, and vice versa for you also if there is someone older than others.
Yeah.
But wonderful. No, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Shiv and Pronita. We covered a lot, and thank you so much for being so candid. I hope we caught some jokes on the camera as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
Yeah, of course.